All right, today we're going to tackle the Sri Lankan legal system. We're going to break it down piece by piece, so by the end of this, you'll have a really solid grasp of how it all fits together.
So here's our game plan. First, we'll dig into the legal framework, the absolute basics. Then, we'll look at the big split, criminal versus civil law. After that, things get really interesting with what I call the Sri Lankan cocktail. You'll see why. Then we'll map out the court hierarchy and wrap it all up with a deep dive into business contracts.
Okay, first things first. Let's start at the very beginning, the foundation. Where do all the laws in Sri Lanka actually come from? What gives them their power? Right at the very top of the pyramid, you've got the 1978 Constitution. Think of it as the ultimate rule book. It is the supreme law of the land, and absolutely everything else we talk about has to play by its rules. And you can see here how it really is the bedrock. It's the anchor for everything else. All the laws Parliament passes, all the decisions that come out of the courts, they're all tied back to this one document.
All right, so next up we have acts. Pretty straightforward. These are the permanent laws passed by Parliament. They cover the whole country and, well, they stick around until they're officially changed or just taken off the books.
And then there's something called ordinances. Now, these are kind of interesting. They're basically temporary laws that the president can make, say, when Parliament isn't in session. They have the same power as a full-blown act, but, and this is the key part, only for a short time, unless Parliament later gives it the official stamp of approval.
And finally, we have cases, or what lawyers call judicial precedent. This is a huge one. See, when a court decides a case, it's not just about that one dispute. That decision becomes a guidepost, a precedent for how similar cases should be decided in the future. So in a way, judges are also making law, just by interpreting it.
Okay, so now that we have the sources down, let's look at how the law itself is divided up. You basically have these two huge pillars, criminal law and civil law. Getting the difference between them is absolutely key to understanding, well, pretty much everything else.
This table lays it out really nicely. On one side, you've got criminal law. This is about acts that harm society as a whole. We're talking murder, theft, that kind of thing. The whole point? To punish the person who did it. Then, on the other side, you have civil law. This is all about disputes between individuals or companies. Things like land issues, divorce, or someone not paying back money. Here, the goal isn't punishment. It's about sorting out the dispute and maybe getting some compensation.
All right, this next part is where Sri Lankan law gets really fascinating. You see, it's not just one system. It's this incredible, unique mix of different legal traditions, all bundled together. It's what makes it so distinct. The best way to think about it, it's like a cocktail. Seriously, you've got all these different ingredients, each with its own history and flavor, mixed together over hundreds of years to create something you just won't find anywhere else on Earth. So what's in this cocktail? Well, the base is a mix of Roman Dutch law that often comes up with land and property, and English law, which you see a lot in contracts and business. But then, stirred into that, you have these personal laws, Kandyan law, Thesawalamei law, and Muslim law. These apply to specific communities for things like marriage or inheritance. It means the law that applies to you can actually change depending on who you are. Wild, right?
Okay, so we've got the laws, we've got the unique blend, but how does it all actually work? That's where the court hierarchy comes in. This is the machinery that puts it all into practice.
Just think of it like a ladder. You start on the bottom rungs, and if you're not happy with the decision, you can climb up to the next level to appeal. It's a really important system for making sure there are checks and balances.
So down at the bottom, you've got magistrate courts for smaller criminal cases and district courts for civil stuff. If it's a really serious crime, like murder, that goes to the high court. From there, you can appeal up to the Court of Appeal, and then, all the way to the top, the Supreme Court. They are the final say. What they decide is the law, and every other court has to follow it. All right, let's bring all this theory down to earth and see how it works in the real world. We're going to do a little deep dive into something everyone deals with, business contracts. This is where the rubber really meets the road.
There's a famous saying in law that you've got to remember. Every contract is an agreement, but not every agreement is a contract. And that's not just clever wordplay. It points to a really critical idea. Just because you and I agree on something doesn't mean the courts will enforce it. There's a formula to it.
So how do you get from just a casual agreement to a real, legally binding contract? It's a step-by-step process. It all kicks off with an offer and an acceptance, but there's a little twist in there we need to pay close attention to.
So step one is the offer. And this has to be a real, clear proposal, not just a, hey, maybe we could. It's one person saying to another, Here are the terms, and I'm ready to be legally bound by them if you say yes.
Now here's that twist I mentioned. You have to be careful not to mix up a real offer with something called an invitation to treat. A classic example is the stuff in a shop window. That price tag? That's not the shop offering to sell it to you. No, it's an invitation for you to come in and make an offer to buy it. It sounds like a tiny difference, but legally it's massive.
So, once a clear offer is on the table, you need a clear, unconditional acceptance. The person has to say, yes, I agree to all of those exact terms. It has to be a perfect mirror of the offer. If they say, yes, but can we change this one thing? Boom, that's not an acceptance. It's a counter-offer, and it just killed the original offer. You're back to square one.
Okay, so we've gone through the whole structure piece by piece. What's the big picture here? What's the main thing to take away about how Sri Lankan law is built? Really, the key takeaway is that the Sri Lankan legal system is this incredible layered mix. It's not one thing, it's pluralistic. You've got this blend of colonial laws from its history, smashed together with unique personal customs, and all of it is held together by Supreme Constitution and organized through that clear court ladder we talked about.
And that leaves us with one final thing to think about. Now that you know about this legal cocktail, how do you think that unique blend of Roman Dutch, English, and personal laws actually plays out in the real world? Imagine a modern business dispute. How does this mix create unique challenges, and maybe even unique solutions? It's a huge question, and it's right at the heart of what makes practicing law in Sri Lanka so complex and fascinating today.